Imagine this: you are sitting by a quiet river. The golden hues of the setting sun reflecting off the rippling water. There is no rush. No noise, just the steady rhythm of your breath. The warmth of the evening air. And a deep, unshakable stillness. The world moves on around you. Yet in this moment, you are completely at peace. Now, pause for a second. When was the last time you felt like this? When was the last time you allowed yourself to sit in silence without distraction? Without expectation? Without the need to be anywhere or do anything? For many, the idea of being alone is unsettling. We are conditioned to believe that solitude is something to be avoided. Something that signals loneliness, isolation, or even failure. Society tells us that friendships and social circles are the markers of a meaningful life. That the more people we surround ourselves with, the more valuable we are. We are taught that happiness is found in constant connection. That the number of invitations we receive, the number of friends we keep, and the number of messages we exchange define our worth. But what if we have been looking at solitude all wrong? What if solitude isn't a void, but a gateway? What if, instead of loneliness, solitude offers something deeper: freedom, clarity, peace? This is where Buddhism presents a radically different perspective. Instead of viewing solitude as something to be feared, it encourages us to embrace it as a path to self-discovery. Instead of clinging to relationships for validation, we learn to cultivate inner contentment. Instead of running from silence, we begin to find sanctuary within it. Much of our suffering in life comes from attachment, our relentless pursuit of external validation, approval, and belonging. We chase friendships, social status, and connection because we believe they will complete us. We fear losing relationships because we think their absence will make us feel empty. But true fulfillment does not come from how many people surround us, it comes from how deeply we can sit in stillness with ourselves. Consider this: when we are young, our energy is directed outward. We build friendships, chase ambitions, and invest in a world that thrives on movement and interaction. We define ourselves through others, through the roles we play, the people we love, and the communities we belong to. But as we grow older, something profound happens: our priorities begin to shift. What once felt urgent, the need to be seen, to be validated, to be constantly engaged, begins to fade. The noise of the world, once exciting, starts to feel exhausting. And in this quieting of external distractions, a new longing emerges, a longing not for more, but for less. Less noise, less expectation, less obligation. A longing for peace. Old age is often painted as a season of loss, the decline of friendships, the shrinking of social circles, the slowing of life. But what if, instead of a time of depletion, aging is actually a time of liberation? A time when we no longer have to chase approval. A time when we are free to move at our own pace. A time when we can finally return to ourselves. This journey is not about rejecting companionship. It is not about pushing people away. It is about learning to be comfortable in our own company, to be so full within ourselves that whether we are surrounded by others or completely alone, we remain at peace. So, what if solitude isn't something to escape, but something to embrace? In this video, we will explore why growing older is not about loss, but about rediscovering the deepest essence of who we truly are. We will uncover the beauty of letting go, the power of self-reliance, and the richness of deep, intentional connections. And most importantly, we will learn why the ability to be alone is not a weakness, but a strength, a strength that allows us to live fully, authentically, and without fear. So stay with me, because by the end of this journey, you might just find that solitude is not the absence of something, but the presence of everything you've been searching for all along. 1. Understanding the shift in priorities. There comes a point in life when we begin to sense a shift. Not sudden, but gradual, like the tide quietly retreating from the shore. The priorities that once governed our days, the relentless pursuit of recognition, the deep-seated need to be surrounded by others, start to lose their urgency. What once felt like an essential part of our identity, our friendships, our social standing, the roles we played in the lives of others, begins to feel less like a necessity and more like an attachment we are ready to loosen. In our youth, we invest so much energy in cultivating relationships, believing that the more people we have around us, the richer our lives will be. Friendships become a measure of success, a way to affirm that we are valued, wanted, and relevant. We convince ourselves that being part of something, whether it be a group, a circle of friends, or a community, gives us purpose. We thrive on interaction, on shared laughter, on the comfort of knowing that we are never truly alone. But as time passes, we begin to realize that many of these relationships, though meaningful in their time, were never meant to last forever. Some drift away naturally, like autumn leaves carried by the wind. Others fade, not because of conflict, but simply because life moves us in different directions. And then there are those we hold on to, long after their presence has ceased to bring us joy, simply because we fear what it might mean to let them go. Buddhism teaches that attachment is one of the greatest causes of suffering. We cling to things, people, titles, past versions of ourselves, believing they define us. But nothing in life is permanent. The friendships that once felt unshakable may dissolve. The roles we played, mentor, protector, beloved companion, may no longer be needed. And if we resist these changes, if we struggle to preserve what is naturally fading, we only create suffering for ourselves. What if, instead of resisting, we leaned into this shift? What if, rather than mourning what is slipping away, we embraced what is emerging in its place? There comes a quiet joy in aging, a wisdom that allows us to see relationships not as possessions to be collected, but as experiences to be cherished. We no longer need to surround ourselves with people to feel whole. Instead, we begin to cultivate a relationship with ourselves, one built on self-acceptance, on presence, on a deep and abiding peace that is not reliant on anyone else. At first, solitude can feel unfamiliar, even unsettling. We are so used to filling every silence with conversation, every free moment with plans, every empty space with someone else's presence. But as we learn to be alone without feeling lonely, we begin to recognize the beauty in stillness. A morning without distractions becomes a moment of clarity. A walk in the quiet of nature becomes a journey inward. The spaces we once filled with external validation become invitations to reconnect with ourselves. And in that space, something profound happens. We stop seeking. We stop searching for validation in the eyes of others. We stop measuring our worth by the number of invitations we receive, the number of messages on our phone, the number of people who still remember us. We stop longing for the past, for friendships that have faded, for connections that no longer serve us. Instead, we find peace in the present moment, in the company of our own thoughts, in the simple joy of existing. True fulfillment does not come from how many people surround us but from how deeply we can sit with ourselves. It is in this transition, from seeking external validation to embracing inner stillness, that we uncover one of the greatest gifts of aging, the realization that we were never incomplete to begin with. 2. The freedom of self-reliance. There is a profound shift that takes place when we no longer feel the need to be defined by our relationships. It is not a rejection of companionship, but rather a release, a quiet surrender of the idea that our worth is measured by the presence of others. For much of our lives, we have been taught that being alone is something to avoid. That solitude is an empty space waiting to be filled. We build relationships with the belief that they complete us. That without them, something essential is missing. We form partnerships, friendships, and social bonds, investing so much of ourselves into them that we often forget where we end and others begin. Our happiness becomes intertwined with the presence, approval, and expectations of those around us. And so, we shape ourselves to fit. We adjust our words to be more palatable, our opinions to be more agreeable, our choices to align with what is expected of us. We compromise, accommodate, and sometimes even abandon parts of ourselves in an effort to belong. We pour so much energy into maintaining these connections, keeping conversations going, fulfilling obligations, being who others need us to be, that we rarely stop to ask, what do I truly need? Who am I when no one is watching? But time has a way of revealing truths we once ignored. As we step into the later years of life, we start to feel the weight of all we have carried. The need to please, the pressure to conform, the fear of being alone. These burdens that once seemed necessary now feel unnecessary. We reach a moment of clarity. We no longer need to live for others. There is something deeply liberating about this realization. Old age grants us permission to let go, to release the need to prove ourselves, to step away from relationships that no longer bring joy, to stop forcing conversations that feel empty, to no longer maintain appearances for the sake of social acceptance. At first, this freedom may feel unsettling. After spending years, decades, even defining ourselves through our connections, the thought of being alone can seem daunting. The silence we once filled with interaction now stretches wide before us. But Buddhism teaches us that true freedom is not found in dependence, but in self-reliance. And what a beautiful realization that is. When we stop needing external validation, relationships take on a different meaning. We no longer seek companionship out of loneliness, but out of genuine appreciation. We engage with others because we want to, not because we feel obligated to. We give freely, without expectation, because we have already found completeness within ourselves. Self-reliance is not about closing ourselves off from the world. It is not a rejection of love, friendship, or human connection. It is simply the ability to exist peacefully in our own presence, to trust ourselves, to know that we are enough, just as we are. This shift is subtle at first, but the more we embrace it, the more it transforms our lives. The silence we once feared becomes a space of comfort. The solitude we once avoided becomes a sanctuary. We begin to see that self-reliance is not about isolation, it is about strength. It is about knowing that while relationships may enrich our lives, they do not define them. And when we reach that place, when we stand firmly in the knowledge that our happiness does not depend on others, we find a freedom unlike any we have known before. We move through life with lightness, unburdened by the need for approval, unaffected by the fear of being alone. We no longer wait for validation. We no longer chase recognition. We no longer feel incomplete in our own company. Instead, we embrace the quiet. We trust the journey. We step into the fullness of who we are. And in that space of stillness, We realize that everything we have been searching for has always been within us. 3. Quality over quantity, the art of meaningful connection. There is a quiet wisdom that comes with age. A realization that unfolds slowly. Like the petals of a flower opening to the sun. We begin to see that life is not measured by the number of people who pass through it, but by the depth of the connections we cultivate. In youth, it is easy to mistake social abundance for emotional fulfillment. The more friends we have, the more invitations we receive, the more our phones light up with notifications, the more validated we feel. It is a comforting illusion, one that assures us that we are loved, valued, and relevant. But time has a way of revealing what is real, and what is merely noise. As the years pass, we start to notice something we once overlooked. Many of these connections are fleeting. Some friendships dissolve with distance. Others fade when circumstances change. And some, though they remain, feel hollow, relationships kept alive out of habit rather than genuine affection. What once felt essential begins to seem unnecessary. The need to be everywhere, to know everyone, to be part of every gathering no longer carries the same urgency. Instead, we crave something different. Buddhism teaches us that true connection is not about how many people we surround ourselves with, but how present we are when we are with them. There is an old Zen saying, when drinking tea, drink tea. It is a simple teaching, but a profound one. It reminds us to give our full attention to what we are doing, to be completely in the moment. If you are drinking tea, do not think about yesterday or tomorrow, just drink the tea. Feel its warmth, taste its flavor, be fully with it. The same is true for relationships. In a world that constantly pulls us in different directions, presence is the greatest gift we can give. It is better to have one person who listens to us fully than to have 100 who only hear us in passing. It is better to share a single conversation that touches the soul than to engage in a lifetime of shallow exchanges. And it is better to sit in silence with someone who truly understands us than to fill the air with empty words. As we age, we begin to choose differently, not because we are withdrawing, but because we have learned the value of sincerity. We no longer feel the need to chase after every connection, to maintain friendships that no longer serve us, to entertain conversations that drain our energy. Instead, we become intentional. We seek depth over breadth. We gravitate toward those who bring a sense of peace rather than those who bring noise. We prioritize those who make us feel seen rather than those who simply acknowledge our presence. There is something deeply liberating about this shift. When we stop trying to hold on to everyone, we make space for those who truly matter. We learn to appreciate the rare and beautiful moments of genuine human connection, the friend who listens without distraction, the family member whose presence is enough even when no words are spoken, the neighbor who offers a kind smile not out of obligation, but out of warmth. These are the relationships that sustain us, that enrich our days, that remind us that we are not alone. And in return, we too learn how to be present. We become better listeners, more attentive companions, more mindful friends. We no longer rush through conversations, waiting for our turn to speak. We no longer engage in relationships out of politeness or duty. We no longer measure our worth by the number of people who call us on our birthday. Instead, we begin to see relationships as they truly are, not possessions to collect, but experiences to cherish. Aging, in this way, is not a loss but a refinement. It strips away the excess and leaves only what is meaningful. It teaches us that we do not need an abundance of relationships to feel fulfilled. What we need is depth, sincerity, and presence. And when we find that, Even a handful of connections can feel like an entire world. 4. Letting go of social expectations. From the time we are young, we are taught the rules of belonging. We are told that being social is a sign of success. That a full calendar means a full life. That staying connected is essential to happiness. We learn that friendships should be maintained. That solitude is something to be avoided. That withdrawing from social circles is a sign that something is wrong. But as the years pass, we begin to feel the weight of these expectations. The idea that we must always be available, always engaged, always present for others, no matter how exhausted we feel, starts to feel less like connection and more like obligation. We begin to wonder, am I doing this because it brings me joy? Or because I feel I am supposed to? Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from attachment, not just attachment to people, but to ideas, to identities, to expectations that no longer serve us. One of the most deeply ingrained attachments is the need to conform to society's standards of what a good life should look like. We are conditioned to believe that being surrounded by people is a measure of our worth. That solitude is unnatural. That stepping away from social obligations is a sign of weakness or failure. But what if all of that is just an illusion? As we grow older, we are presented with a rare and beautiful opportunity, the chance to step away from these pressures and live on our own terms. There is no rule saying that we must stay in friendships that no longer fulfill us. There is no obligation to keep participating in conversations that exhaust us. There is no requirement to force ourselves into social situations that bring us no joy. The only expectation that truly matters is the one we set for ourselves. At first, letting go of these expectations can feel strange, even uncomfortable. We have spent so much of our lives seeking approval, making sure we are doing things the right way, ensuring that we fit into the mold society has given us. To suddenly decide that we no longer need to follow those rules feels almost rebellious, as if we are breaking some unspoken contract. But then something shifts. We start to see that being alone is not the same as being lonely. Solitude, when embraced rather than feared, can be one of life's greatest gifts. It gives us space to think, to reflect, to understand who we are beyond the roles we have played for so long. It allows us to move through the world on our own terms, to choose where we invest our energy, to surround ourselves with only that which brings us peace. And perhaps most importantly, it frees us from the exhaustion of performing. When we let go of the need to meet external expectations, we no longer have to be someone we are not. We no longer have to force enthusiasm for things that do not interest us. No longer have to keep conversations going simply to avoid awkward silences. No longer have to say yes when our hearts are longing to say no. Instead, we live authentically. We learn to listen to ourselves in a way we never have before. What do I truly enjoy? What brings me peace? What relationships nourish me rather than drain me? These questions become our guideposts, helping us shape a life that is simple, intentional, and deeply fulfilling. Some people will misunderstand this shift. They will assume we are withdrawing, becoming distant, losing interest in the world. But in truth, we are not disconnecting, we are reconnecting. Reconnecting with ourselves, with the things that truly matter, with the quiet wisdom that comes when we stop seeking approval and start honoring our own needs. There is a profound peace in this kind of living. When we release the pressure to conform, we make space for real joy. When we stop chasing validation, we find contentment within. When we stop fearing solitude, we discover the quiet beauty of simply being. True peace is not found in keeping up with expectations. It is found in letting them go. 5. embracing the gift of your own company. There is a quiet transformation that happens when we stop fearing solitude and start embracing it. For so long, we have been taught that happiness comes from the outside, from relationships, achievements, the approval of others. We chase these things, believing they will bring us fulfillment, believing that without them, we are incomplete. But Buddhism teaches us something radically different. Suffering does not come from being alone, it comes from resisting our own company. We have spent years, perhaps even decades, looking outward for a sense of belonging. We have measured our worth by how many people surround us, how often we are needed, how well we fit into the roles assigned to us by society. And yet, despite all of it, there are still moments, quiet moments, when we feel something is missing. We search for distractions to fill the space, fearing that if we sit still long enough, we might have to face ourselves. But what if the thing we have been running from is actually what we need the most? Old age is often seen as a season of loss, the fading of friendships, the slowing of life, the quieting of once busy days. But in truth, it is a time of profound gain. It is an opportunity to return to ourselves, to strip away the layers of expectation and simply be. It is a time to rediscover who we are when we are no longer performing for the world. In solitude, we begin to hear our own voice again. The voice that was once drowned out by obligations, by the noise of social expectations, by the constant need to be everything for everyone. We remember who we were before the world told us who to be. At first, the silence may feel unfamiliar, even unsettling. We are so used to filling every moment with conversation, every space with movement, every pause with something to do. But slowly, the quiet becomes comforting. We begin to notice the small things, the way the morning light filters through the window, the rhythm of our own breath, the way a single moment of stillness can feel expansive, endless. We start to enjoy our own company in a way we never have before. We move through the day at our own pace, no longer rushing to meet someone else's expectations. We engage in activities not for validation, but for the sheer joy they bring. Reading a book, tending to a garden, walking without purpose, these simple moments take on new meaning when we are fully present for them. And then, something incredible happens. We realize we were never truly alone to begin with. The universe has always been with us, the wind that moves through the trees, the sun that rises without fail, the breath that sustains us each moment. There has always been a deep, unshakable connection within us, one that does not rely on others, one that does not disappear with age, one that remains steady and whole. Embracing our own company is not about isolation, it is about liberation. It is about recognizing that we are complete, that we have always been complete, that the love and peace we have been searching for has been within us all along. And once we understand this, we are free. Free from the fear of being alone. Free from the need for constant validation. Free to live each day with a quiet, unshakable joy. Life is not measured by the number of people we meet, the number of conversations we have, or the number of moments we share with others. It is measured by the depth of presence we bring to each experience, by how fully we embrace the life unfolding before us. And perhaps the greatest gift of aging is the realization that we no longer have to chase anything. There is no race to win, no approval to seek, no expectation to fulfill. Everything we need has been within us all along. There is a quiet kind of freedom that comes with letting go of the need to be constantly surrounded, the pressure to always be available, the fear of missing out. We step into a different rhythm, one that is gentler, slower, and more intentional. In this space, we learn to move through the world with grace, to choose peace over noise, to cherish the moments that truly matter. A morning spent in solitude, feeling the warmth of a cup of tea in our hands. A walk under the golden light of dusk, where every step feels unhurried. A quiet afternoon where time itself seems to stretch, no longer dictated by external demands. This is not loneliness, this is presence. This is not isolation, this is self-discovery. When we release the fear of solitude, we begin to see it for what it really is, an invitation. An invitation to meet ourselves again, without distraction, to listen to the whispers of our own hearts, to sit with our thoughts and not feel the need to run from them, to embrace the sacred stillness that has always been waiting for us. And in this stillness, something beautiful happens. We no longer mourn what has passed because we see that nothing was ever truly lost. The people, the places, the seasons of our lives, they remain with us, woven into the fabric of who we are. We carry their lessons, their warmth, their laughter. And as we embrace the present, we come to understand that this moment, this breath, this space, this quiet, is all we have ever truly needed. So as you continue your journey, I invite you to reflect. What brings you peace? What moments make you feel truly alive? Have you ever found joy in your own company? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, your reflections, your experiences, your wisdom. Because as much as solitude teaches us to be content within ourselves, sharing our insights with one another reminds us of our deeper connection. And perhaps, in the process, your words will inspire someone else who is on this same path. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this message resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might need it today. And if you haven't already, I invite you to subscribe and join our growing community, where we explore life's deeper questions and walk this path of wisdom together. Remember, you are never truly alone. Within you is an entire world waiting to be embraced. Within you is peace. Within you is freedom.